Somewhere in the Wasatch Mountains lies a headstone, a memorial for a father, uncle, doctor, and sheepman. This place does have a name, but due to unique circumstances, we need to withhold that information for now. My Uncle Les was born in 1928 in Spanish Fork, Utah, the offspring of a family that immigrated to Utah from England in the 1800s. Our great-grandfather farmed in Benjamin, Utah, and also raised sheep, summering in the Wasatch Mountains and wintering in the West Desert. Several of his sons followed in this endeavor, and our grandfather was one of them. Although Grandpa enjoyed getting dressed up and going to the city for the wool growers' convention or to a ball game, he never was far from the sheep business and the range that supported it. Grandpa was conservative in his politics, but he was sort of an anarchist when it came to the ever-increasing rules the government, in the form of the Forest Service, imposed on livestock men, more or less telling the stockmen how, where, and when to graze their herds. I'm sure the rules are imposed for the greater public good, but I never personally witnessed anybody purposefully overgrazing or mismanaging their range, or messing in their own bed. Grandpa wanted all of his children to get a good education, and all but one managed to graduate from college. A fair achievement considering they lost their mother to illness when the oldest two were 14 and 12. This tragedy coincided with the onset of the Great Depression. Grandpa also lost his sheep to the bank, and my mother and aunt raised the rest of the kids. My Uncle Enoch and Uncle Les graduated from medical school and had a dream of sharing a medical practice back home and also to take over the sheep business that Grandpa had built up after the Depression. The uncles set up a clinic in Spanish Fork and worked with the sheep too, but Grandpa was still involved then, and he often provided the day-to-day expertise that was needed, especially when the young doctors were tied up with their new medical practice. During this time in the early 1960s, I was in high school and involved with 4-H and FFA projects and exhibited purebred sheep and market lambs at many livestock shows and fairs throughout Utah. My Uncle Les was a great influence on me at this time. He had also been active with show sheep during high school. He had even gone so far as to have exhibited the Grand Champion Market Lamb at the Golden Spike National Livestock Exposition in Ogden, one of the biggest shows in the country at that time. My uncle taught me how to fit and show sheep. As soon as I got a taste of doing this, I more or less lived and breathed stock shows all through high school, and I was fortunate enough to have received a work scholarship to college as a show hand at the College of Southern Utah in Cedar City. My uncle taught me all I know. Later on, life happened, and the young doctors went their separate ways, and Grandpa got older. The family sheep business finally slipped away. My Uncle Enoch stayed in Spanish Fork, and my Uncle Les ended up living in Southern California. He couldn't quite leave the sheep alone, though. His kids were active in stock shows as they grew up. They even had a pig pen in the backyard of their upscale Lemon Heights neighborhood, to the horror of some of their neighbors. And his two daughters won positions as the pretty young girl who would walk the team mascot on the sidelines for the Los Angeles Rams in the 1980s. Now we fast forward many years and many stories, both good and bad, ahead to this past summer, when we decided to have a big family reunion back home in Spanish Fork. I wanted to make up a little display to illustrate to my younger cousins how the sheep ranching was one of the cornerstones that got us where we all are now. When my Uncle Les's son asked me to help him place a memorial headstone for his father up on the summer range, where our old corral used to be, I felt I could hardly tell him no after all his dad had done for me. Although part of me wanted to, I was worried about the Forest Service. I tried to tell him that the Forest Service would not look kindly upon our placing monuments upon the public domain, even though it used to be our old country, and that we would have to observe all the rules and regulations regarding our trespass into this area. On the other hand, I really want it to work out, and I felt it would be a fitting tribute to a man who gave me so much. Well, the cousins arrived. We hauled the monument up to the mountains and placed it and held a little ceremony. Since it's hard to tell where the old corral even was these days, I hope not too many people happen by it. And if they do, I pray they won't take offense to our marker. It only takes up a few square inches of the public soil, although to us, it does occupy a much larger place in our hearts.